Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get tonight's meeting, the Kalispell Planning Commission now, and get it to order January 14th, 2025. Can I get a roll call?
Rory Young,
Here.
Tim Stockland, Pip Burke,
Here.
Shelby Odell,
Here.
Doug Kaufman,
Here.
Joshua Borgart,
Here.
Chad Graham.
Here. Quorum is present. I'm going to move into approval of minutes for the December 10th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the approval of the minutes of December
Second.
10th, 2024.
Motion seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'm going to move into this evening's Hear the Public. This will be the point in time when anybody in the public can address the Planning Commission on anything other than what's on tonight's public hearing. If there's any public comment, please step to the mic and state your name and your address. Seeing none, I'm going to close Hear the Public and move into tonight's public hearing. There's one item on tonight's public hearing. It is file KZTEA 24-01, a request from LPW Architecture on behalf of Emmanuel Living for a zoning text amendment to allow pedestrian skybridge connections over right-of-ways to encroach into the front and side corner setback areas. Staff report.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you go into stuff, excuse me.
You're going to what?
I need to recuse
Oh,
on
okay.
this particular item because I am involved with this project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So thank you. When a skybridge connects two buildings across the street, there are potential issues related to both setbacks from the property line as well as the encroachment into the right-of-way. Current setback provisions do not allow any portion of the structure to encroach into the setback. Under the zoning ordinance, setbacks apply to any part of a structure such as eaves or decks. If a skybridge crosses a right-of-way, it needs to be within the setback area in order to make that connection. In this particular example, if this is coming over the roadway, the main building is set back 15 feet. Just as a matter of course, you're going to have an area right through here and right through here that's going to be within that setback area. This amendment would allow for the connection to be located within that setback area if it's located in a business, healthcare, or public zone. The amendment is intended to address a technical zoning issue, and a lot of the details of construction are already handled through existing city regulations. The encroachment to the right-of-way is handled separately through an encroachment permit issued through the Public Works Department, if it's a public right-of-way, or through whoever owns a private right-of-way. Details of the construction of the skybridge are handled through the building permit and site review processes, including types of construction and appropriate clearances. This is the specific language for the proposed text amendment. Say, notwithstanding any setbacks specified in this ordinance, a pedestrian skybridge connecting two buildings located in any B, H, or P zone, which extends over a public or private right-of-way, may encroach into the front or side corner setback area, provided that all other applicable zoning and other code requirements are satisfied. There are currently two sky bridges within the city of Kalispell. The first one connects two Glacier Bank buildings in the downtown area on 2nd Street West, just off of Main Street. Since it is located in the B4 Central Business Zone, which does not have setbacks, there was not a setback issue with the connection. The second sky bridge connects county office buildings across 11th Street West and is part of an overall construction project that declared an agency exemption as a county agency. Zoning did not apply to the project. In neither situation was the setback an issue, and it did not need to be addressed at those times. While this proposal is not a review of a specific skybridge, the purpose behind Emmanuel Living's proposed text amendment is for a skybridge across Claremont, connecting its existing facility on the west side of the road to a new addition on the east side. The setback in the H1 healthcare zone is 15 feet, which would not allow the section of the skybridge from the building to the sidewalk area. In order to construct the connection, this text amendment is necessary. As noted in the application materials, quote, "The street is quite busy with both vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic. Many of the drivers and walkers are elderly and have mobility issues. The proposed pedestrian bridge is intended to bridge the two sides of the campus and provide safe access for residents. Many residents of Emmanuel Living utilize amenities on both sides of the campus. The pedestrian bridge will provide a safe route for residents to access the amenities on either side of the campus, unquote. Sky bridges are not directly addressed in the growth policy, although Chapter 8 on transportation lists several goals and policies which call for providing safe streets for both vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Allowing for sky bridge connection between buildings helps provide a separation between vehicles and pedestrians, which in turn reduces the potential for accidents. By furthering those goals and policies, the request is consistent with the growth policy. With that, staff would recommend that the Kalispell City Planning Commission adopt the findings in staff report KZTA 2401 and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the proposed amendment be adopted, and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Gonna open this item up for public comment. If there's any public comment, please step to the mic with your name and address. Okay, I'm gonna close public comment. Look to the commission for a motion.
I move to have the planning commission accept the request from LPW file KZTA-24-01 and recommend it to the city council for approval.
Second.
Okay, second, any discussion?
I don't think I said that right, but that's what I meant.
All right, all right.
Close enough, it works.
I think it's pretty straightforward. What I like about it is the separation of vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic. And also, I can just see how a sky bridge would go and make the usability of the two different structures a little more cohesive. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer
Yeah,
on it, so.
gives wheelchair better access.
Roll call.
Joshua Borgart,
Aye.
Doug Kaufman,
Yes.
Shelby Odell,
Aye.
Pip Burke,
Aye.
Chad Graham.
Aye. Motion carries. When will that be in front of the council?
So first reading would be February 3rd.
Okay, February 3rd. All right. Okay, that is it for tonight's public hearing. I'm gonna go ahead and close that and move into old business.
All right, we didn't have any public hearing items, so there weren't any agenda items that the council looked at. Although I would note on the 6th, there were two final plats from projects that we've worked on in the past. There was Kalispell North Town Center, phases 6 and 7. That'd be the Costco site. And then Bloomstone phases 5 and 6, which would be apartment development right off a 4-mile drive to the west of Kid Sports. Both those final plats were approved.
And then new business.
So next month, we'd have presumably one agenda item, which is the Vista Ridge condos. That's the work session that we have on tonight. So depending upon how that work session goes, and if the Planning Commission wants to move that forward to a hearing, we'd have a public hearing on that on February 11th at the next Planning Commission meeting.
Okay.
We'd also be anticipating work sessions next month. We did get an application in for 90 acres just to the northwest of Glacier High School, which would be a mixed-use development that would be coming in through there. We'd also anticipate doing further work sessions on the land use plan.
Okay. Anything from the commission? Okay, I'm gonna kind of reiterate one of the things that I mentioned last week on the city council was that this upcoming year will be my last year on my last term for city council, so I don't intend on running for Ward 2 again. That will affect my position here on the planning board. So next year, when new council is sworn in, they'll probably be going through at some point and appointing a new liaison from the council to the planning board. So that'll probably be my last time. So I'm not really quite sure, you know, if in May when we go through and have other appointments coming in, if somebody's wanting to go through and take the reign on the chair of the board, because 6 months after that, 8 months after that, I won't be here doing that. So it could be a transition period for somebody if they're wanting to do that. So, I just wanted to bring that up, and if you guys want to think about that, that's all I have. And we're gonna move into work session immediately after adjournment. The first item is file KA 2410, KPUD 2405, and KPP 2406, which is Vista Ridges Cottages LP. They've submitted applications for Vista Ridge Cottages, including requests for annexation, initial zoning, RA1, with a planned unit development overlay and preliminary plat approval of 96 residential units on approximately 15.78 acres, including lots, roads, and common areas. The second item would be our ongoing work sessions on Senate Bill 382 for the Montana Land Use Planning Act. So with that, we're adjourned. Okay.
So ready to go ahead and roll?
Yep.
Okay. So I guess just a precursor, every time we've got a plan unit development, there is a work session that we do on that. It's not intended to be a public hearing, it's informational. It's try to get the commission up to speed, see if there's any additional information that they want to see to get the information out there for the public. So there's no specific decision or recommendation made tonight. Public hearing, as I mentioned earlier, presumably would be then in February at that meeting. This particular project, as you mentioned, Vista Ridge Cottages included requests for annexation, initial zoning of RA1, along with the planned unit development overlay and preliminary plat approval. They were looking at 96 residential units. And as an aside on this too, with anybody on the commission, because it's a work session, feel free to interrupt and ask any questions as we're working through this. So, but there's 96 residential units, which would include 53 detached single-family and 43 attached single-family townhome type of units. It'd be on 15.8 acres. That's located at 489 2 Mile Drive, which is just immediately to the west of landings at 2 Mile, which would be the new, they've got 2 of the 3 phases of that apartment complex under construction. You've got the bypass right off to the west, although there is not an on or off ramp on 2 Mile Drive. I would also note that we recently had approved subdivision Pioneer Estates just to the west of Greenbrier in that area. There's utilities in the area. You can see water and sewer lines that come along the western boundary here, would connect in with Teton and also down in this portion of 2 Mile Drive. It's the shot of the site from the apartment complex. The existing zoning is County R1, and as mentioned, the proposed zoning is RA1. As you'll see on here, most of the surrounding zoning around the city is RA1 or RA2. There's RA1 to the north with apartments through there, RA1 down in this area, RA2, which is a higher density apartment designation with that new apartment complex, than it is R4 with Greenbrier off to the west. The growth policy kind of splits the property in two. Part of it on the west is urban residential, and on the east is high-density residential. The urban residential category supports up to 12 units per acre. The high-density supports up to 20. They're looking at 6.1 units per acre as part of the proposal. This is showing that overall layout. Again, 2 Mile Drive down here where the connection would come in, and then an extension of Teton coming in and running through the property with potential connections to the west, as well as a potential connection off to the north. There'd be a fair amount of open space in here, including off in the southwest corner, and then areas between the different buildings. I'll kind of get into a zoom in here because it's kind of one of the unique categories of what they're looking at doing here. There's also a fair number of shared driveways that they would be doing, and also limited access just off the alleys as part of the development they'd be doing. Deviations as part of the PUD. A lot of this flows from the smaller lot size that they would be seeing in there. You'd see reduction in the lot size from 6,000 square feet under the standard zoning to 3,200 square feet for single family and sublots of 1,200. And along with that, you would see some narrower lot widths going from 50 down to 44 for single family lots, 16 for the sublots. Setbacks, as would typically happen in those situations with smaller lots, would be proposed to be reduced somewhat, likely down to 10 feet in the front, and then maybe 0 when you're facing some of the common area, as well as some increase in the permitted lot coverage due to the smaller lot size. For subdivision regulations, really the main thing is generally you wouldn't have alleys as being the primary access. But as we've done in a number of other recent plan unit developments, when we have some of these smaller lot sizes, you would see 30-foot alleys that would provide the main access. So a lot of them would have, not all of them, but a lot of them would have frontages on the street that be served by the alley, but it would be an expanded alleyway, such as Starling is one example of where we did that. Zooming in here, and this is kind of what makes this a little bit unique, although not entirely, because we have approved this style of design. This is a lot more of a central focus in this particular PUD, whereas some of the other ones, it's been a little bit more complementary. But this is in that northern portion where you'd see the rights-of-way coming around this block. You'd have townhomes that would be oriented in 4 attached unit configurations, and then would be served by an alleyway that would come through. So there'd be 3 alleys coming through. But then what all these would have would be shared common area that would be interspersed between those buildings. So you'd have buildings that would either be opening up onto the public street, like on this side, or in the center area, they would have, again, the garage access off the back, but the front doors would open up into a shared common area. And that's where it's kind of more of the cottage design and where you'd have some of this, the name coming from, really.
What's the width on that, PJ?
The width of which?
The common area between the townhomes?
I want to say that they're approximately 30 to 40 feet in that general area. It'd be just over 600 feet for the block length, and then 30 feet on the alleys, and then, at least per this layout, it'd be a little bit narrower on this side just to fit in, and then with common area kind of capping on the 2 ends.
Thank you. I just said thank you.
Sure. Then that southern portion where you'd have the alley access, you'd have kind of a longer block that would come through. It would have a pedestrian connection coming down the middle. But the ones that would be running along the north, again with the alley access, 30-foot alley, but then you would have them fronting on the street. The southern bank that would be coming through here would have this large common area that the front doors would open up into. This is just showing the proposed plat itself. I would note that there's an ag exemption that's on the property that would go away as part of the subdivision review that the city would be completing. Probably the most significant development constraint on the property is that about probably 40 to 50% is within the floodplain. Generally speaking, you wouldn't subdivide in the floodplain. One of those exceptions to that would be if you go through a FEMA process removing that floodplain area from the flood maps. So it's something called, it's a conditional letter of map revision based on fill, or a CLOMR F. It'd be a process that you would go through, again, with FEMA, where you'd be doing a study on that. They would need to follow that up with a floodplain development permit once that's approved by FEMA, where they could then place the fill. And then after that, you would actually do the LOMR F, the letter of map revision itself, where those maps are actually revised by FEMA to take it out of the floodplain. And that allows that to be done. And that's similar to what was done with the apartments. You can kind of see this is the original floodplain coming through here, where the southern third-ish of that property was within the floodplain. They brought in fill and went through that FEMA process and floodplain development process to remove it from the floodplain. They did submit a geotech along with the subdivision. And that will probably need to be updated when that fill comes in. Building department certainly would want to see, compaction reports and so forth to make sure that was brought in and compacted appropriately. So, like I said, no red flags that we saw at this point in the geotech, but, definitely some updates that would probably need to be done at some point. While there's floodplain, this is showing the wetlands inventory, and there aren't any wetlands that impact the property with any of the setbacks that we have on that. They did submit a TIS, traffic impact study. Indications are that there would likely be no mitigation required as part of that, although there are some cleanup comments that have been provided to the developer. We did get some of those back from our third-party reviewer at KLJ that provides comments on those TISs as they come through. There were some engineering comments forwarded to the developer as well. This is kind of showing the utility layout. One of the main ones I just kind of wanted to highlight was making sure we extend the utilities to the far property lines so that those roadways, not just the roadways, but the utilities as well, can be extended as development occurs beyond that. The developer is proposing to use a construction system that utilizes prefabricated building cells that are then assembled and roofed on site. This is kind of going through some of the elevations that they were showing as part of that. Some of the smaller ones being just a 1-bed, 1-bath unit. Again, a lot of this is trying to keep with trying to get more affordable housing, more affordable ownership on the market, and so utilizing some of these smaller lots and smaller designs. But they'd also have some larger ones, 2 to 3 bed and 2-bath units, 3 to 4 bed units, as well as in the townhomes that you can see with that. So with that was kind of running through all the topics on there. Were there any questions or comments or anything? The developer is here if there was any questions that you had for them as well.
When do they plan on doing the road construction for 2 Mile?
Do you know when that is?
The one that we have the HUD grant for.
Yeah.
We have until we have a few years until we have to spend the money, and we're still working through the agreements on it. So we've gone out and done survey on it, but haven't really started any design yet. Just waiting to kind of get through that agreement process.
It's been budgeted as part of the grant, as well as that there was a bit that came out of the West Side TIF as well. So it's budgeted. It's just a matter of getting the agreements in place, the design. So it's still ways out, but
Okay.
What do the phases for this look like? Like, would they do like the panhandle at the bottom to start, or would they start up at the top and work their way down?
Probably the top. Yeah, we go ahead. Oh, as far
Go
as
ahead-
phases.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Phases, we're not proposing any phases on this. We'd be doing the whole thing at the same time, yeah.
And are like the common areas supposed to have like playgrounds? Or are they just open areas to walk your dog?
I don't think we have that nailed down completely yet. We have some we had ideas of like gazebo in one area, or like some barbecue spaces in some, but mostly want to have it as like walkways and for like movement with a little bit of like areas for people to gather and mingle, but not to necessarily like especially the narrower ones. It wouldn't seem to like want to have people congregating there.
Those border sections around the top and the side, how are those supposed to like necessarily impact like the already surrounding neighborhoods and houses that are already there?
I'm sorry, with what part?
So with the surrounding lots around the perimeter of it at the top and on the side, how are those going to like impact the neighbors that are already built or the apartments that are already there?
Okay, so like on the east side, those are apartments, and you're mostly abutting like parking lots there. So it'd be like a backyard, and then a parking lot. So those are in single family home. And then on the north side, we've got well, it's apartments there too, but it's kind of open there right now, and so we've got backyard kind of, it's backyards mostly, and then on the west side, of course, it's just a roadway that would provide access to a future development if that ever happened on that property.
And it is MDT, its own property, it's excess land from the bypass that's
Yeah.
off to the west.
I think one of the things that I've had a couple of people approach me about on some of the apartment complexes that have gone in the past couple of years, and I asked this question a while back about payment in lieu of parks or something like that. But I've had people ask me about the possibility of like a playground going in. Yeah. They're finding that some of these apartment complexes are going in, but they're not like putting like a playground in or something like that. It's your development. I'm just putting
Yeah,
it out there, food
sure.
for thought. I mean, it's
Yeah, I think we are a little short on area. We're not as far as that. So we were going to do some a combination of like improvements and cash in lieu. I think that was a suggestion from the city because we can do like the city has like a cash in lieu of, or we can do improvements. So I think playground equipment would be like appropriate. And so yeah, that's really would be yeah, I would be very open to that, I think.
And just as a note on that, so what the regulations require is 0.03 acres per unit that's in there. And you're looking at land with recreational value, but you're also looking at the improvements that are going in on that too. So you're looking about the value of the playground equipment or the gazebo or whatever is going in there. So, if 3 acres are required, you might only see 2 acres, but you're looking at the value of some of the improvements on there as well. Cash in lieu is a little bit different too, and that'd be if you didn't provide any of those amenities,
Yeah.
then you can make a payment in to the city, and then that could go towards a city park that might be in the vicinity for improvements on that.
Yeah, I think that with this, it'd just be really good for the development if we could keep all, because there's some really nice open areas in it. I think that it would be, anyways, we'd work with the city on that, how you would want to see that split out, I'm sure.
Rory has a question.
Rory.
Thanks. I have a couple things. Maybe I'll just ask them all at once so that I am less disruptive. I didn't see any sidewalk on the west side of that west loop road. I don't know if that's intentional. I have a question on the driveways. I don't know, maybe PJ, you can look at it in the subdivision regulations. It says that all lots should have a 20-foot minimum access. And I don't know if I'm misreading the way that's worded. And then I saw parking spaces on that plat at 9 foot by 18 foot, and the subdivision regulations require 9 by 20.
Okay, so first with the sidewalk, I think that was one of the engineering comments that Public Works passed on to the developer as part of that. So that just wasn't reflected in the plans, but there was a comment that went out on that with a number of other relatively minor design elements that would need to be addressed. In terms of the size, that access, I think what you're looking at there is because the subdivision regulations don't really talk about the size of a driveway access coming in. So 20 feet is the minimum width that you'd have to have. So if somebody was, say, creating a flag lot or something like that, you need to have at least the 20-foot access. Doesn't really relate to the driveway itself. And then, yeah, as far as and in a similar way too, with the size of the parking spots under the zoning regulations, a parking space is 9 by 20. Typically, you would have 2 parking spaces per unit, and then we would be reviewing those as part of the building permit. They might be providing those inside a garage or within a driveway if they provide the 20 feet. So typically, we don't look at the driveway dimensions as part of the subdivision, but that would be something they'd be responsible for meeting when they came in for a building permit.
Anything else?
Sorry. It might connect to Teton, is that correct?
Yeah, we'd be extending Teton through the subdivision. I think that's, what is that, an arterial or, I can't remember the terminology. I'm not on the,
Collector. Minor
it's a collector, minor collector. So we'd be extending that straight through, and then, we wouldn't have any driveways accessing off that. It'd be the alleys because they control the access on that, so.
Okay, so just like basic traffic control, it wouldn't be like too congested.
No,
Okay.
yeah, there wouldn't be any driveways coming onto Teton. It would be, there'd be 2 alleys or 3 alleys from the northern block that would access it. And then all those southern lots would access off of the side streets.
So when the traffic study was done, was it done on 2 Mile and Teton or just 2 Mile?
They analyzed, like 2 Mile, Teton, like all the way up to like Hawthorne and,
Okay.
the surrounding, I think I had to go, what, like a half a mile or a mile, I think it was, it's a quarter mile. Sorry, this is out of my specialty here, but they had to go a little to intersections a ways out of there to make sure that it wasn't gonna impact those, or if they were, that we had to deal with that, so.
And they're not done building the landings yet on the north end of that, so once that's complete and this is completed, it'll still balance itself out, probably.
I would think so. Yeah, traffic's not my specialty, but I did go through the report, and it seems like they were taking into account these other subdivisions, but I could be corrected if I'm wrong about that, so.
So my question is when we see this again in a month, if we decide to move forward, will we have a little more clear definition about where your paths are going in your open space and just exactly what amenities are going to be attached with those?
We certainly could. Yeah, so, we would be like open, like what kind of amenities, like what kind of ratio, like, because if we're short on land, parkland, would you want to see cash in lieu, or would you want to see amenity improvements? What kind of a ratio within that would that be, or what kind of amenities are you
I think
Would you
yeah,
like, or-
it's not very common to have the cash in lieu. I think
Yep.
generally developers,
Yeah.
especially like if they're going to spend the money, they want to have
have it improve
have
the
it right
subdivision
there.
itself, yeah.
And I think that it's beneficial
Yeah.
to the development too, because then you're not requiring people to travel,
Sure.
half a mile
I
or a
agree.
mile to do something. So generally we like to see that on site and try to work with particularly the Parks Department in coming up with a plan that makes sense.
And I think that like a playground would be appropriate, certainly. Yeah, I don't know, like what I guess if Guy and John here speak to that. They're kind of the artistic type.
John Sinard here. I did meet with the Parks Department, and they were actually looking at having a dog park, potentially a dog park on that lower southwest park. In regards to the question in the working session, is this going to be a private HOA, or is it going to be open to the public? That's a very important issue that needs to be addressed if we're looking at trying to provide additional park or amenities to individuals outside of the HOA or outside of that subdivision, which then also leaves potentially the subdivision up for if anybody's injured on that or in that open space or park area using the equipment. So that's something that was never really brought up in regards to the Parks Department, but that's something that the developer has analyzed, and we want a little bit of direction.
Yeah, so here you would expect that to be a homeowner's park, which is what we do in almost all of the subdivisions. A city park would need to, generally, for starters, they're acres or more. But typically here it would be a homeowner's park that would be private.
Okay, so that would not be opened up then to the general public. And the issue with the townhomes up above, the intent is to keep this affordable. And if you go back to the original elevations and the floor plans, those are stackable modules that can either go by side or stackable. And we are working at the prices on those to keep them in a very reasonable purchase price. So what we have done is in the main floor plans, if you look at them, there's another sheet in here, but they have multiple plans that can be put and stacked together. And then they're gonna be craned on, okay? They're beautiful in what is done with Fading West, and Fading West actually has been hired by FEMA to provide housing and other issues out in Hawaii in their natural disaster. But these units, as they come in, what we're trying to do is create a legacy type subdivision that has longevity. We're looking at the actual functionality of the subdivision within it used by the individual owners of the property. These properties are not leased, not rented. People buy them. They then can lease or rent them once they own them. But this is truly affordable housing, which we are missing in Montana. And being a realtor and seeing the issues going on within the state and around the state, it's difficult for people to produce moderate income, affordable housing. So when PG said affordable home ownership, that's what this is. And it is not subsidized by anybody, where the developer is working to maintain these prices. So if you go back to the subdivision itself, PJ, so the intent is in the townhomes, so we'll call it the first block up there, that is to create front to front covered patio areas or front decks where people can actually enjoy that common area. You're going to have some, not necessarily barbecue pits, but you'll have barbecue stands, you'll have some benches out there, picnic tables that people can actually enjoy, and hopefully create a community atmosphere in that area. And then if you look at the right-hand corner over off of Teton, that's going to be the gazebo and kind of the same thing. So we're creating little pods that people can actually, you don't have to go anywhere. They can go right out their front door and they can throw a football or a baseball, have a little bit of fun, and get to know their neighbors instead of not knowing them. And then if you go down to the lower area, the same concept is in this area, this is a mix of where individuals, depending on what they want to purchase, they can do 2 stories, they can be side by side, single story. Ranchers looking at older individuals that may be selling their homes and wanting to downsize. So it's going to meet those needs. And then you're creating the same common concept at the lower portion where that park is opened up. It just becomes a little bit larger park. But again, the same concept. You're going to have the ability to have barbecues out there. You'll have some benches out there and create a actual neighborhood and a community atmosphere instead of, I don't know what my neighbor is. Now you actually know who these, well, hopefully they would know who their neighbors are. And they'd be able to have use the park and the subdivision in a communal atmosphere. And then the park in the lower southwest corner, again, that is open up to ideas and suggestions. And that's going to be trying to discuss what the needs are or what the Parks Department wanted to see. We're open to some suggestions. The intent is to try and keep, there's at least 18 potential single bedroom units within this subdivision spattered throughout. The majority of them are on the north portion of it, but they're also spattered throughout the lower section. And that would be trying to keep the home somewhere around maybe under 300 to 325, depending on what the infrastructure costs are going to be. But that's what the goal is. And the developer is very fervent on trying to meet those goals.
I like the idea that you're doing like a neighborhood kind of design, and that's great. That's what we need. You did say something about people buying these places and then possibly renting them out. So if this is not going to be an HOA, then the concept of people being renters in and out is there like some sort of rules that are going to be placed over them where you have to rent 6 months to a year and you have to kind of a thing? Or is it like, Airbnb, you're here for a week, you're out for a week?
Well, that's going to be up to the state legislature, and right now they're having a big argument about short-term rentals, long-term rentals. I'm actually the president of the Montana Landlord Association, and I do and have read several Supreme Court rulings as well as local rulings in regards to rental units. However, this is Montana and we still appreciate property rights. But this is not a multifamily renters only and one corporation or one individual owning them.
Okay.
This is individual home ownership, and once you have individual home ownership, it is your property to do within the HOA regulations, within the zoning, and within the law what you want with that property.
So there will be an HOA?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the intent.
Okay. Now I'm done.
I do want to just make sure I got the numbers correct. One of the smaller single level properties, was it 18 by 32?
Correct.
That number comes out to
Roughly.
about roughly just under 600.
574 square feet.
Cool. That
And
comes
we're
out-
also giving them, or putting in a one-car garage as well.
Cool.
That's the size of the unit, not the size of the lot.
Yeah, that's the unit. But the point being is that you're suggesting the property like that would, in theory, from a market price, you're shooting at low 300s, which is somewhere just under $600 a square foot built.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's with the lot.
That's, yeah, see, when you're looking at it, we'll say from a real estate standpoint, you have to look at the land, building, and fixtures, infrastructure, all the amenities that go with the subdivision for development. And then what is the goal you're trying to look for? And that includes every cost associated with selling it, profit, everything that goes with it. And I know in the trades, and I believe Councilman Graham can attest to this, it gets pretty expensive when you're just dealing with literally raw structure and putting a building together, and the cost per square foot has risen exponentially. Additionally, with the roof structures and the designs, we are not going to have everything just a gable roof. We want to have different elevations, we want to have different colors, we want to have a mixture, so it's not, oh, it's all the same track housing. So there is design, there is intent, there is a goal.
Well, it gets into a little bit of, I mean, since you brought it up, what it does is it gets into a little bit of the discussion that we had a couple of years ago when it came to ADUs, that, you know, one of the things that was going around at that point in time when we were talking about the ADUs was that this was, you know, kind of like the silver bullet, or it was going to be another tool in the toolbox to help out with affordable housing in Kalispell and everything. And, you know, one of the things that I brought up to at the time was that you can't equate a smaller house necessarily with it going through and carrying a much smaller price tag.
Yeah.
Because, like, say in this instance, every one of these lots carries the same infrastructure with it that another lot would have that's going to, you know, carry a larger house or something. So those things are all apples for apples. When you have a smaller unit that has, well, so I say 600 square feet, that's less square footage to divide out into the cost of the project, meaning you're going to be spending more per square foot. If you went through and you were putting $1,000 square foot house on there, the rooms are just bigger. You've got 1,000 square feet to divide out into the cost. Now you're at $300 a square foot. So I see it all the time when people are coming to me asking me, what's it cost to build? And I'm like, it depends on what you're building, because the smaller you go, the price per square foot can get alarming. The larger you go, it can go down. So, but I see what you're saying, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, part of I just wanted to verify just from a numbers expectation, just because I know that some of the feelings of, I think the historical aspect of expensive tiny homes becomes like a comment. And it's a moment where for providing for all of these services, that ADU concern was like, hey, why don't we just put up a duplex instead of going to ADU? Like that was the whole historical thing. And that from a cost perspective makes way more sense. What you're trying to accomplish makes perfect sense. And I just wanted to make sure that from a numbers game, it was a known thing, because once it starts going in the 400 or 500s, it becomes an ultimate mess, because at that point it just becomes difficult. And I was just trying to make sure I had the numbers right.
Well, from a real estate perspective, and from a lifelong Montanan, and his two children have moved out of the state because they couldn't afford anything. Not just jobs, but you can't, it's difficult to afford housing.
Yep.
And individual older folks that want to downsize and move into a more manageable property, or have a rancher. I think there's so many different needs out there. You can't meet all of them. But what you can do is you can, it's like you don't eat an apple one bite at a time, or it whole. You can take it one bite at a time. And these are small little things that, if this project becomes a standard bearer of what can be done and what can be accomplished, when good individuals have a goal of trying to meet the needs, then that does set the bar. And hopefully everybody else out there would start looking at it from that perspective and try to do something similar.
Rory has comments.
Rory?
Just one thing, and I don't know if this is for the applicant or for staff, but the application was 466 pages, and I know that we all read every single page, but if it could be laid out so that we have the application, the narrative, and then the plans, that would save me a whole lot of time.
And we can work on that. I like short and sweet and simple, right to the point. This is affordable housing, it's quality housing, and it's a community housing that I think Kalispell would be very proud of.
So the first 6 months are free then, right? Just kidding.
Say that again?
Said first 6 months are free.
Yeah, there you go.
There's affordable housing.
Doug, and to answer your question, we'll work with the developer on the parks plan. Everything that the gentleman mentioned, the barbecue pits and paths and gazebos, that would all be part of that recreational amenity that they have planned. So we'll just lay it out as good as we can and break that down.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I saw some sort of representation there.
Hi, my name is Guy Hatcher. I'm on the development team, and John's been pushing this for me because I'm not here all the time. I do have another home here up in Whitefish. I've been up here for 15 years, and I've seen the problem. I finished a new home 2 years ago. I know what kind of issues we have with the subs up here, but I also know about the affordable housing shortage and just the housing shortage, period. I do want to kind of give you my vision real quick. We ran across these guys a few months ago. This is just one model. This Fading West company. We've been to the plant. We're going to go back to the plant in 3 weeks. They've got a very unique model. They do it in cube systems, like, John has kind of attested. We've showed it to the staff, and the staff's been phenomenal. I'm in three city meetings tonight with my team, and this is the best city we're working with right now. The easiest. They've been professional. They've been just fantastic, giving us the input, all that kind of stuff. We want to make everybody happy. My vision is very simple. I've driven Kalispell. And so when you're going to get into, the double unit side by side, I'm looking at the streets, I'm looking at the pads, I'm looking at everything. And the problem you get into this, and it's just some of the little stuff I want to try to deal with. I want to put fencing into the budget of the house. I want to put landscaping to the budget of the house. And the reason I want to do that is I want to control that. I want a certain look. I want a stain on a fence. So the neighbors, if they're upset, there's going to be fencing. We're going to have privatization. I think we can bring a product to the street right now without a lot of add-on and all that. And of course, by the time we start this next year, I think we're going to be somewhere in that 320, 325 range on our low models, and going about 470 on our high models. Every bank I've talked to here, because I've picked out a partner here already, and they said, dude, if you do anything underneath 500, you're going to be a home run. And you sell it out in 2 summers. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but our goal is to have consistency in the look and the touch. And then the way I'm going to manage that as I exit out once this is all finished up is through the HOA. That we can put some tight guidelines. We're dealing with the attorneys right now to make sure we get the right guidelines in there that will, once I get that addressed this month, we can give it to the staff and get y'all's input also. Because I really I want this to be something that we are proud of. If it works on this the way I think it's going to work, hey, we'll go do it again. Fading West is out of Buena Vista, Colorado. If you haven't gone to the website, you can look at it. They've done their own village there. It's just brilliant what they've done. They got 50 guys in the back of a warehouse, so they're doing a modular model. They're building it. It comes in on a low boy. We lift it on a crane. We pop it on. It takes about 8 days. It's ready to sell. I mean, that's cool. They're doing 24 cubes a month out of there. So if you're doing 2 cubes a house, they're doing 12 houses a month. They're doing it through a staff of 50. They're controlling the lumber. They're controlling the output. You just have a little bit higher efficiency. Now, the problem we're having, and we're looking at some other vendors, is the pricing of the shipping in. And, to get them from Buena Vista to here is costing some money. But I've got to look at that in the efficiency that I'm getting with these guys and also the cost versus using local subs and the time expiration. So these are things we're going through. They will be certified, whoever we choose. We might end up with 2 or 3 vendors, but I love this model, and I think this model can be brilliant. Parks, whatever we got to do in the parks. I mean, I've got a couple parks in Texas, so playgrounds are easy to put in, some things like that. I am with John. I do want this to be a community. Yes, we're going to have some rentals in there, I'm sure, but as far as I see exactly what his vision is. First-time owners, I've talked to 3 banks in town, and they said, dude, we have them lined up. We'll come by right now. Okay, we'll see. So, it's these young couples, it's these retired people, stuff like that. They want to kind of be in that price range, or they want that simplicity. So that's kind of the vision coming in. And so, I think we can hold it in there. It's kind of where we're going right now, and I think it'll be a unique product. I really do.
Efficient and quality, I'm assuming.
Quality is phenomenal. It'll be certified by the state, all that kind of stuff. It is a home. Studs, the way they do it, when it comes in, it's sheetrocked. It's got all the cabinets in. It's got everything done. They'll make the modification on the ship in. They say they have a few adjustments. I have a warranty with them, which we'll put our warranty on it. So I think I think we're going to be able to. I'll get a decorator involved that we're picking the right units out. Because, I'm not colorblind, but you don't always want me picking them all out. So anyhow. But they do have a lot of flexibility. That's what's cool. John is saying you can have them stacked. You can have them side by side. They can put another bedroom on the back. They can do different things. So my vision is to do about 10 pads at a time. We've already gone ahead. We've already picked out the 10. Get them ordered. In about 2 months they're in. We put them on, and then we're pouring the next 10 pads. That we're rolling these out about 10 pads at a time. I think that's the best way to sell that, and we'll just see what sales really turn out to.
Okay.
Good? Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm good. Was there anybody online with questions? Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm going to open it up for public comment. So maybe not, directly. If you guys want to talk afterwards out and back, then that happens a lot too. But I'm going to open it up we're done here for comment?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm going to open this up for public comment for anybody in the audience. If there's public comments, step to the mic with your name and address.
My name's Lindsay Fisher. I own 212 3 Mile Drive. This is butting up to the bottom of our horse pasture. So I guess I just want to know what's going to protect us against the development and our livestock and all of that. Like, what is the distance between our property and the homes coming in? I don't know if this is the correct time to bring it up. I just want to know all of those homes and the north part of it, what it's going to do to my property.
It's the right time to bring it up, and we've had this type of situation pop up in the past with other developments. And what we did then is I think the way that starts is it's a communication with you and the developer to facilitate that discussion as to what your concerns are, of how it could affect you, and then what they can do to go through and help you with what your concerns are.
Because right now we have the apartments on the south end of our property. We have people coming in and riding our horses, trespassing all the time, taking our signs down. So having another development with a lot of people, I can see more trespassing, people riding our livestock.
Oh, you're just to the north.
Yes.
Yeah, I've already
It's,
talked to you.
well, this is our family property.
Yeah,
We've
no,
owned
no,
it
I
since
understand that.
the 1940s.
I'll give you my number.
Thank you. I guess I just want to know what you're going to do to protect what we have right now. And from people renting, renters, people coming into our property, how close it's going to be to our horses.
Well, first
The
of all,
boundary lines,
we're gonna
all
have
of that.
fencing all around. So I'm talking about putting fencing on each and every property. So they're gonna have a backyard, they're gonna be fenced. So they're climbing over that fence and coming to your property? I'm not gonna be able to handle that, but I can privatize it from their perspective and your perspective by the fencing.
Okay. Is it going to be, are they going to, how much footage from the back door to our property line is it going to be?
Every pad's gonna be different, the way they're designed. Back on.
So I'm just gonna kind of maybe reiterate that this would be a discussion that you guys would have
Okay.
outside of the council chambers, but I mean, your comments are taken.
Okay.
And, the last time that this had happened this
Yes.
way, it turned out to be a success for both parties.
Okay.
So this is gonna come in front of the council as well.
No, that's fine.
So it's also gonna come in front of us again. So this is just a work session. So there's gonna be a lot of different opportunities to go through. This is the first start of it. So this is the work session. We go through and we find where there might be some pressure points and stuff, and that there's gonna be some issues, and this is where we go through and try to start working through them. But if there's anything that we need to do to go through and try to help with that, then we won't know until, it comes through on a subsequent meeting. But the place to start is for you guys to start talking.
Okay.
That's where it starts. And then, sometimes I guess maybe from this point on, after a meeting that goes to the council, we start playing parents. So,
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just, just wanted information. This is my grandmother's property. It's our family's property. I just want to know how we're going to be impacted. Yes, John did contact me to buy our property, but we're not interested. So,
well, this will be moving, I guess after this we'll,
yes. Okay, thank you.
thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, not seeing any there, so, what's the, will of the commission? I'll move this forward. I think I'm okay with it moving forward to a regular meeting.
Yeah, I'm good to move it forward.
Yeah, me too.
That'll be next month.
That'd be next month, so that would be Tuesday, February 11th, 6
Okay.
o'clock in here.
Okay, so that being said, February 11th, we'll be back in here. In between then, try to see where both sides fall on that issue and what can be done and what your concerns are with it. And at that point, we could have a completely different discussion about your concerns and stuff, so. Okay, moving into the second item.
They could do target practice signs, give over the fence.
Well, but.
Click.
PJ.
So just, I guess as a quick precursor before they get started, so it's the, I think, third work session that we're doing with their new land use plan that we'll be looking at a number of these over the coming months, heading into the summer. Tonight, we're really focused on emergency services. So we've got the fire chief and police chief both here to talk about how we serve the community and how we're looking into the future on some of that. So I'll turn it over to the fire chief, Dan Pierce.
Thank you, Commission, for this opportunity to be able to give you a short presentation about the Kalispell Fire Department. As PJ mentioned, my name is Daniel Pierce. I'm the fire chief here in Kalispell. And what we're going to look at tonight is just a real quick synopsis of a little bit of our past, our present, and then our future. So next slide. Thank you. Go ahead. So one of the things, Kalispell Fire Department's an all hazards, and you can go ahead and scroll through those pictures. All hazards organization. We not only do we do house fires, we provide the ambulance service, we provide tech rescue services, we do aircraft firefighting. We are all hazards. The number is 911, and we usually handle everything that we can. Here's a hazmat incident that we responded to, and yes, we even rescue ducklings up at the hospital. So really, we're there for our community no matter what the event may be. When windstorms happen, 911's called. We're the first ones out there taking care of trees in the roadway, water leaks, things like that. We are there to serve. Okay, PJ. So real quick snapshot of a little bit of our past and where we're going. So when we look at just back to 1999, we saw that the city limits went up to the original campus of FECC, and then we only went down to 18th Street. We went west to Bojangles Restaurant. Unfortunately, they're not going to be there any longer. And then we went to the east to Whitefish Stage. And our population then was about 15,000, and we were about 8 square miles. At that time, we did about 2,500 calls a year in service. And actually, most of those EMS calls were in the county. At that time, our ambulance service covered most of Flathead County. At that time, we had 3 chief officers, 18 line suppression personnel, 1 station downtown here, and we had a billing secretary. And like I said, we went north to the dumps. I was on calls all the way up to Happy's Inn. We went south to Lake County. We did all of Creston, the Foothills area, and up to the Silver Bullet. Next slide. So now today, we have 2 chief officers, a billing clerk, 32 suppression personnel, 2 fire stations. So in 2005, we did add an additional station. Our current population is approaching 30,000. And as we know, we serve at least a population of 55,000 during normal business hours. And we are the fastest growing micropolitan city in the United States. So our square mileage is increased to 12.4. And as we know, the city is long and narrow. And I recently took a study group that visited us. We went down to our southern end to School Edition where FedEx is. And we were in my truck and I said, okay, you guys, we're just clearing a fire alarm here at FedEx. Now we're going to get on the bypass and pretend that we got tapped out to a structure fire in Silverbrook. And how long do you think it took us to get there? It was almost 18 minutes. And we have 1 staffed fire engine in the city of Kalispell. So they got a pretty good snapshot of what is going on. Our calls for service now are at 4,600 calls, and that is almost entirely in the city limits of Kalispell. So we went from 2,500 calls, majority of those were in the county, and now we're at 4,600 calls, and it's in the city. So next slide. So our current fire stations, as you know, down the street, we have our Station 61. That was built in 1981, right next door. And actually, it's next door to one of the original firehouses where the courts is now, where we actually used to have the horses. At that station, we have 1 fire engine that's staffed with a 3-person crew, a reserve fire engine, an ambulance, a hazmat truck and trailer. We have the Bear SWAT vehicle there, and then 2 chief vehicles. So in 2005, we have Station 62, and I think everyone knows where that's at up by Costco. And that's cross-staffed with, basically we can either hop on the ladder truck or we have 2 ambulances there. And typically up there at Station 62, there's 4 people on duty, 5 people on duty. So our staffing between the 2 stations is 7 to 10 a day. But remember, with vacations and sick leave, we actually average about 7 or 8 per day for our staffing for the city. Next slide. There's a picture of our downtown station and our Costco station. So just a real quick snippet of where we're at now. We're up to 32. We recently passed a levy that was a lifesaver for us. And so with that levy, 2 new positions were created for fire training captains. Our study showed that we were deficient in some areas, and so we're able to promote a couple of captains, and we currently have 11 folks in a new fire academy right now. They're about 2/3 through their academy. We were allotted 13 FTEs, but we could only fill 11. We truly went for the best candidates we could find. So we are going to hire an additional 3 this spring to bring our allotted FTEs up to what we're allowed. When Station 63 is built, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second here, we will be adding an additional 15 FTEs. So that'll bring us from 32, and now because of this levy, we will be up to 59. And this will give us 2 dedicated fire engines, 2 dedicated ambulances, and then that new Station 63 will give us the ability to either staff a fire engine or an ambulance based on what call type comes in. So that levy has been a breath of fresh air because now we'll be able to add 27 FTEs to our organization to help deal with the growth. So currently our staffing, I'm not sure if you folks are familiar with this. So we think about 59 people. You know, when we were visiting the community with our levy information, a lot of people thought, what are you going to do with 59 people on duty every day? And that's not what it is. So we have 3 shifts of right now of 10 individuals. They work 24 hours a day, a 56-hour work week, and that's reduced to a 47-hour work week by what they call as a Kelly day. So right now, our typical staffing, as I mentioned, is 7 to 8. And then now with this additional staffing, this recruit academy I was just speaking of, it'll bring us up to 14 individuals per shift. So when we take into consideration that sick leave or vacation, we'll have minimum staffing of 10. So we'll be able to have the dedicated 2 engines and 2 ambulances 24 hours a day. Next slide. So in fiscal year 26-27, as authorized by the levy, our FTEs, we'll then be able to bump up to 19 per shift, and that will include a battalion chief. Having 3 engine companies like that, the span ratio 1 to 3 to have a battalion chief to be able to command those 3 engines is appropriate. Minimum staffing will then go to 14, and we'll see how it breaks down there. Station 61 will have downtown now we'll have 3 firefighters and 2 firefighters on an ambulance, so the 3 will be on the engine. Same thing at Station 62. They'll have an engine with 3, an ambulance with 2, and the battalion chief will be there. And then our future station proposed in the next 2 years will have 1 engine or an ambulance. And then if staffing is greater than 14, which can happen in the wintertime and it's not hunting season or spring break, we could potentially end up with some more staffing, and we'll use that staff to staff additional ambulances. Next slide. Currently, at the top of that slide is where we're at right now. So Station 61, we have an engine that's staffed downtown, and then at Station 62, we have the 2 ambulances or an engine. And we run out of resources on a daily basis. For an example, Evergreen was in our jurisdiction yesterday 3 times to help us out with an ambulance. So this levy was a lifesaver. So the bottom photo, part of that is when we were talking to our folks in the community about our levy, this is exactly what we're going to have now. So we'll have an engine and an ambulance downtown. We'll have an engine and an ambulance at our Costco station. And then at Station 63, we'll have an engine or an ambulance based on the call type. So when we think about our firefighting efforts, we typically could hit a fire with 1 engine, and then we're getting assistance from other agencies. Now you think about if we have the capacity to be able to hit a fire with 3 engines, it's going to be significant to our citizens here. Next slide. I'll bring these maps up in just a second as I complete my presentation. But one of the things there, Station 63, we're 2 years out, and that's at Mountain Vista and Farm to Market. And then Station 65 up on Church Drive to the east of Silverbrook, we're looking at 5 to 7 years. Station 64 that is undetermined. This years ago, a previous chief had picked a general area south of town, but there's no property picked out for that station. Next slide. Station 63 right now, the city of Kalispell has a lot, a good-sized lot there at Mountain Vista Way and Farm to Market. So that is our next station that will be built in approximately 2 years, and that will be staffed with that cross-staffing of either an engine or an ambulance. And as we know, our growth right now, a lot of our heavy growth is to that west side corridor, and we have a lot of areas out there that have been in the city for a period of time, but it's sort of a little no man's land off 3 Mile that were really difficult for our downtown station and our Costco station to get to. And this new station will really help those areas out greatly. Next slide. The city currently has land for Station 65, and that is at Church Drive and just west of Silverbrook there. There's an RV storage area there for the Silverbrook residents, and this property is at that location where the green X is. So again, that's 5 to 7 years. That might be a little optimistic. It may be closer to 10 years, but as we see, our growth to the north and to the east and west is tremendous, and we think about the subdivisions on Tronstad. We've got more development filling out Silverbrook, and then also some new development to the northwest of Silverbrook. The potential for that station, that need, could be much sooner than 10 years. Next slide. So here's some things that's really important, factors that affects our response times. We all know what it's like trying to get through Hutton Ranch at 5 o'clock. Weather conditions, and here's something that I think a lot of folks, as we look at our response maps, that folks they don't know behind the scenes what really goes on. When a dispatcher gets that 911 call, it can take them 2 to 3 minutes to properly code that call before it even gets to the fire station. So that's time, that call processing time can be very lengthy. When the crews are notified, that's called turnout time. And you think about it, if you woke up in the middle of the night, we strive for a minute, slightly over a minute, to get out of that station and on our rig. Well, in the middle of the night, you're typically not sleeping in bed with your clothes on, so they got to get dressed. If they have to get their turnouts on for a structure fire, there's a little bit of time lost there as well too. And then ideally, our response time, it's fantastic if we can have a 4 to 5 minute response time. So already we've added up to nearly 10 minutes. And at Kalispell, we're not doing too bad. We're under 10 minutes. We're around 9 minutes on an average for our calls. But that's why it's so important that our good station coverage exists and we have adequate resources so we can keep up with the growth. There's the Three Stooges, but I had some maps, real quick, PJ, if you can just,
Yeah.
I think the Station 61 map might work for all of them, so we don't have to go through them all.
Let's see if I can get that.
Dan, if you get a minute, could you explain how mutual aid works as well?
Yeah. Okay, so we see our downtown Station 61 there in red, and that's the ideal 4-minute response time. And that is not taking in consideration, when I worked with GIS on these, that's not taking into consideration weather, traffic conditions. This is just them taking the distance from the station and then applying it to this map. So Station 61, we see that 4-minute in red, and then we see the 8-minute in purple. We can see how that Station 63, the blue dot on the west side there, the left side of the graph, how that really covers an area that it's difficult for us to cover right now. So Station 63 will be there in the next 2 years, and we can see up to the north where Station 65 will be. And that will really give us some good coverage of our growing areas. I have spoke with the police chief and the city manager. In the future, I really feel that downtown corridor fire station, Station 61, I think Station 61 and 64 can be merged somewhere on the northern end of Airport Road, and we could very well cover 61 and 64 out of one station, which saves the taxpayers a lot of money, keeps costs down, but we could really cover both of those stations area out of one station. I don't foresee the growth to the south ever being to a point that we would need to have a separate station down there. So that's just something that we've talked about on the backside, planning for the future. But as far as our future right now, Station 63 in 2 years, and then Station 65, potentially 5 to 10 years to that northern end. So, and then Jared asked about mutual aid with our neighbors. So, Chad, I know you've been a witness to this in your neighborhood. Chad had a fire in his neighborhood the last year and a half. And actually, the Evergreen station is a little bit closer to Chad's area than our city station. So in that regard, we are all on the run cards to help each other out. So Evergreen and Kalispell, we have the city of Whitefish. We are all on run cards together to help each other out. We're career departments. We can hit a fire typically pretty hard. But again, we have to wait. If that fire is on the west side of Kalispell or in town, we have to wait for our next backup coming from Evergreen, Whitefish, and Smith Valley. Smith Valley provides an ambulance for us when we have a fire. But as far as firefighting companies, it's Evergreen, Whitefish, and then if we get into larger events, then we'll bring in West Valley, Creston, Columbia Falls, things like that. So it's mutual aid, it's automatic aid. We're on it. We get together as chiefs and decide geographically which units would be the best next to serve where that call comes in. So that's how our mutual aid works here, and none of us are big enough to take care of these calls on our own. I mean, we've had some significant fires that we've been very grateful to our mutual aid partners. When we think of just the Quonset hut fire we had on Center Street, we had Whitefish here for hours, Evergreen here for hours, and they help us. Likewise, we do the same for them as well too. So, yeah, hopefully that answers that. Do you guys have any questions at all about the fire department, our future? We're very thankful for our community for this levy because it was a big ask. They saw the need and they answered that, so we're thankful.
Yeah, that was a big ask. That was a heavy lift, and I'm glad to see that it's being put together. You said 11
right
hires,
now.
So in the academy, so I'm really glad to see that.
Hopefully I didn't go too fast, but sorry.
I was going to say one thing that I don't know if a lot of the community knew about, and I just wanted to make sure you knew about it, was the cost on one side of the fence, which was taxes, right? People had a lot of emotion about that. And it's not that I took it on my responsible thing or whatever. Several friends of mine are firemen in Whitefish. And we discussed some of the taxation issues versus insurance issues and the cost of insurance for what had occurred up there. And it took a little while for people to realize that they were not going to be having to pay such high rates for their insurance based upon certain times. And I don't know necessarily if I didn't see anything because I wasn't paying too much attention, but that was the big response was, I'm paying a lot of money. Well, here's the deal. If you don't realize that if you don't pay this money now, you're going to be paying, your insurance is going to be through the roof. And so I don't know, just for future, if there was more clarification on that, it would help out a lot because I had to do that a lot with people. And it was just like, hey, trust me, you should vote for it because if you don't, you're going to be paying a crap load of money if you live in this area. Like, this is very important. So that being said, I don't know if I made a mistake by not seeing it, but that's what I saw with people that I interfaced with.
I appreciate that conversation, and especially with our commercial business owners, it really affects our commercial business owners. If our ISO rating, which we're currently at 3, which helps adjust insurance rates, our ISO rating's a 3, but we are on the verge of going to a 4, which for our commercial folks would raise their insurance rates up significantly. But now with this levy, we actually have an opportunity to decrease our ISO number down to a 2. So that they will see for our commercial folks, it'll definitely help them out. But thank you.
Yeah, so this is just a question for my own personal interest. Do you rotate staff through each station? Or are there staff specifically assigned to, say, 61, 62?
That's a great question, Doug. So, in order to keep folks up on their skills, we've instituted, when I was here in the 90s, once you were on they call it the bus, the ambulance, you're on it until somebody retires. It was, I don't know how long some of you have been here, but there was a fireman we had named Pat Bowles who was unfortunately killed in a snowmobile accident. He was in the back of the ambulance for 16 years before he died, not on the fire engine. There's definitely some bad things that go along with that. If you don't keep your skills up on the fire engine, that's so important. So what we do now is our crews up at the Costco station on a regular rotation, they will come downtown and be assigned to that engine for at least a shift or two a month. So they can stay on top of those firefighting skills and not get burnt out, because we really do have to think about that too, right? The mental health of our folks, we're running 4,600 calls. That's a lot of, majority of that's emergency medical calls. So we do that rotation, and Doug, that was a great question, and that's how we're addressing it, is getting them some time off the bus and getting their skills up on the fire engine.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So any more questions on the fire side?
Nope.
Okay. So we also have Jordan Benicio, who's the police chief, and he was going to touch on police services.
Yeah, thank you, and Commission, thanks for having me here tonight. I did have a big presentation planned, but Chief Pierce actually told me that I shouldn't do a PowerPoint. Now I know it was to make me look bad. He came down today and said, yeah, we're not doing that. So I don't have anything fancy for you. But I do have some information on our staffing and our current buildings that, as we look towards the future, I see it as positive and needed for the changes we have. So I'll start with staffing. 2008, we had around 35 police officers at KPD. Over the last 16 years, we have grown that to 43 officers, and that's through general fund and a few grants throughout that time, but we've grown it that much before the levy. As we spoke about with fire, we did have the community pass a public safety levy this last year, which will grow our police department an additional 10 officers. And then we applied for a grant this last year where we received an additional FTE for a dedicated DUI officer in Kalispell. So that puts our full FTE to 54. With the levy and the more recent changes, how we're deploying that is we're adding 8 officers to our patrol ranks. And so those are our normal shift work, patrol car officers. It'll give us 1 to 2 per shift additional. We're adding 2 additional detectives to help with a rising felony caseload, typically from violent crime, crimes against persons. We've seen large increases in that over the last few years. So those 2 additional detectives will be a big benefit to that. Our average call volume the last few years were around 35 to 37,000 calls for service a year at the police department. And one of the main goals, or 2 main goals, with the levy and with the increase in staffing is we want to increase proactive police work, not be as just responsive, but we want to make sure we're engaging and deploying in areas that we can proactively get ahead of some of these problems, and then also decrease our response times. Similar to Chief Pierce, the KPD's response times were higher than we'd like to see. I believe they're around 9 minutes response time for a call. We want to lower that with the additional staffing. As far as facilities upgrades and things we're changing, we have been in that building for, I'm sure, since the 80s at the police department. And we have some current changes that I believe will get us probably another decade. As far as space needs, there's just not a whole lot more room we can grow there. But recently, over this last year, we had the West Side TIF approve a project of the old Parks and Rec building. And that'll be going before council this next week to start a project on that to turn the old Parks and Rec into a new evidence facility, and our detective division will be there. So I would suspect in the next few months we'll have that available for space. We also, city-owned property on the south end of town by City Shops, it was occupied by the school district. We have now started utilizing that as a new search bay, a search facility for the police department, as well as some storage areas where we have long-term evidence challenges, whether it's vehicles from large cases or smaller items of evidence. We now have the space for the foreseeable future to utilize that area, and it was already city-owned property. Once we have the investigations and the evidence move into Parks and Rec, that creates another shift that we'll be able to remodel a locker room to adjust for the space. I think we'll get around 65 lockers. And this is taking every possible square inch we can get into this building over there. But again, I think we will get a decade. New locker room, new training room, just to handle the increase of staffing that we do have. And that's about, there's a lot more in my PowerPoint, but I'll have to get back with you guys on that. You guys have any questions for me on that?
Not on that. I assume you know my wife, Krista Borgart.
Yes.
Back and forth.
Yes.
Part of the interesting thing, I do not envy your job in any which way, man. Like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how Brian does it. It is extraordinarily phenomenal how difficult I think it is to do the legal type things, keep all of the items in line, but still provide a service. I think for the most part, I think your biggest hurdle, and I as an outsider, I don't know if it's a good thing to say or not online, but the county needs to become aware of how much they need to pay attention. And I just wanted you to know, there's a big problem with not being able to put people in jail. And I really want you to know that, and I want everyone here to you have no idea, and I'm sure if you ever want to talk about it, if this is an appropriate space. But dude, how many people don't get tried? I wish we would know that number. I wish Brian was, there's so much there involved, and I wish somehow in some way that we could figure out a nice big jail space where people can actually be put and properly prosecuted and not just kind of hey, you'll have to go because of A, B, or C. I know about several scenarios where people have been put in and let go just because there's not enough space. And I don't know if that's your investigations unit and your focus has such abilities to get it through it, but at the end point, where do you put everybody?
Right.
Because that really needs to be addressed. And I just want you to know it as an outsider. Man, I really wish the commissioners would wake up.
Sure. We definitely have work to do. The levy was we tried to be clear with that when we were talking to the community about the levy, that this is a great start. And this is really good for Kalispell to show the support for public safety, whether it's fire or law enforcement. But it's not the end of things that have to be accomplished to see real impact. No. And so while now we have the officers and the capacity to get there quickly, there's a whole nother side of criminal justice that we have to have on the other end to truly be as impactful as we want to be for the community.
And I just want you to know, that other part, whatever you can do to help out with that, I don't know, it is what it is.
Yeah, appreciate that.
What does KPD have to do with the pre-release center that everybody keeps talking about and bringing up? Because that's based off what you just said. That's what I'm wondering.
I'm actually just talking about an actual jail.
Okay,
Right now.
Not just the county
The
one.
amount of people that are physically in jail.
Yeah.
Versus what wants to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good relationship.
It's like the hourglass thing. You've got this big month and this little hole and can't.
Correct.
Yeah, we really wouldn't have a ton of involvement with the pre-release aside from any calls for service that are generated from it. We wouldn't have any day-to-day involvement with that facility or bring people to it. It's essentially they're out within the community. If there are violations or crimes that we need to respond to, we do.
And I like to give police and fire and the city council a lot of credit because they essentially have audited themselves the last couple of years, and that's how they know where the issues are and they know what they need to fix. It's the nuts and bolts of a city, right? Like this is the basic services that the city needs to be able to provide to be a safe, livable city. And the city stepped up. The city, everybody within the city, the public, doing the levy, but it all came by looking at themselves. So a lot of credit to them. But certainly as we move forward, planning wise, what we could do, we've done. The land on the west side, when a subdivision coming in, we knew that was a location, there needed to be one, so that lot's there. Land acquisition at that point, like what would we do at this point if we didn't have the land, right? Silverbrook, it's there. So, now I think as we start to look at our land use plan, we probably need to work out the details with 61 and 64 and start to come up with a plan like that. If the plan is to just consolidate those somewhere down there off cemetery, when a subdivision comes in, we need to be ready to look at that, just like we did a water tower site or any of these infrastructure issues that we need as the city grows. So.
Wouldn't use the cemetery road property for that, would we? That's already.
I mean, it's big enough.
That it couldn't be used for that.
Yeah.
But there is, there's opportunity down there, whether it be a subdivision. There is some other city property down there but like I said, there will be future subdivisions down there. There's other properties, that would be farther out. But once we know what the plan is, what the vision is, we can strive to that. So.
All right. Is that it? Okay. I'm going to end the work session then.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank you.